If you're an e-learning professional or a manager concerned about acquiring e-learning for the people who work for you, you both know that every e-learning development project has to make trade-off decisions between cost of development, time of development, quality of material, and engagement of the learner. This e-learning program explores those in depth. The overview that you're about to see will give you a clear indication of whether or not this program is the right program for you as you decide how to use or make e-learning in the most effective way possible. Good day. Welcome to Making Effective Decisions about Developing E-Learning Content. If you're an e-learning developer, if you're an individual responsible for managing the development of e-learning, if you're an individual who participates as a subject matter expert in the development of e-learning programs, or if you're just interested in the topic, this is the right program for you. This overview will give you a clear understanding of what's covered in this e-learning program and allow you to make the decision about whether or not you should work your way through it. Thank you for taking the time. Before we look at the actual content of the program, though, we have to come to a common understanding of what we mean by e-learning. And here's how we think of e-learning. It must be something that's capable of being delivered to a learner over the internet, even though you could choose to deliver the program on a DVD or CD which runs on that person's computer. It must give the learner control over the place, the time, and the pace in which the learning occurs. And this is one of the things which distinguishes e-learning from a lot of online learning, where the control is still under the control of the teacher, even if the teacher has faded into the background. E-learning must use some computing device controlled by an operating system. It could be a microcomputer, a desktop, or a tablet, a smartphone, anyone. But e-learning does take advantage of the fact that it is a form of computing, although a very sophisticated form. Not all online learning is e-learning. Some online learning is simply conventional teaching translated into a format which can be delivered over the internet. And a lot of the conversation about hybrid learning in universities is exactly this. Video a lecture and then deliver it over the internet. It may be online, but it is not e-learning because it doesn't meet the three critical criteria of delivery, control, and platform. So, how do we measure the success of e-learning, particularly when that e-learning is delivered to or addressed to working professionals, people who have day-to-day responsibilities in the workplace? The only measure of success which is relevant is skill transfer back to the job. And the reason that I believe this is because for many years as a working executive, I paid a lot of money for professional development programs, and I at times carefully, systematically measured the impact they had on the people who were working for me, the people who went on these programs, and what they did back on the job. It's not about what people do during the program. The effectiveness of any form of professional development is all about what happens when the person gets back on the job and how they apply what they've learned to improve their personal effectiveness and productivity. It's the only relevant measure. It's the only one which justifies real return on investment from e-learning and all other forms of professional development. So how do you, as an e-learning designer, go about accomplishing this, increasing the skill transfer from your e-learning program to the person's back on the job, day-to-day working world? There are 7 critical success factors. Let's look at them. The first relates to timing. There has to be as little time as possible between the time the person participates in the program and their ability to actually apply what they've learned back on the job. Sending someone on a program for something that they're going to do 3 to 6 to 9 months from now just doesn't work. The content has to be relevant. It has to relate to the day-to-day work that the person is doing or is going to be doing. The content has to feel normal. There has to be cultural familiarity. The material that's presented has to use the language of the person's workplace and look and feel as close as possible to the individual's day-to-day working environment. The content has to be right on. It has to do a great job of taking the person through the required steps in the learning. And these days, with our sophisticated understanding of adult learning principles, we can create content which does exactly that, as well as our ability to work with subject matter experts who really understand what we're trying to teach. There has to be a learning style fit. The content has to be presented in a variety of ways so each person who's exposed to it can find things in the content which matches their learning style. The days in which a professor or teacher simply projected their personal learning style and turned it into their teaching style and taught everybody in that way are over. With the flexibility that we have, because we can take advantage of all of the sophistication of the delivery platform, the operating system that we're using, we have to really think carefully about shaping content and providing it in a variety of ways so that each learner can find their best way of learning in our content. Once the person's back on the job, there has to be on-the-job feedback. It has to tell the individual how well the skill transfer is going and how they're moving. And finally, once the person's back on the job, there has to be on-the-job recognition and reward for success. So those are the 7 critical success factors. So if these are the critical success factors, as an e-learning designer designing some content, not all of them are under your control. You might be a human resource professional who has some ability to influence these issues. Let's look at that in a little more detail. Some of these critical success factors are on the participant's manager's control. Specifically, timing the course is something the person's manager negotiates with the individual and perhaps with the training organization. Arranging for on-the-job feedback is something the manager has to do as part of their overall coaching of the individual. And providing on-the-job recognition and reward is something, again, that the manager has control of, not you as an e-learning designer. As a human resource professional working with managers who are sending people on programs, you might stress these, but even then, all you can do is influence. Ultimately, it's up to the individual manager. At the same time, these are under your control as an e-learning designer. The relevance of the material, the way that it's shaped and presented so that it's culturally familiar, uses the language, and looks like the workplace that the participant will be transferring the skills to, the quality of the content so that it is effective in teaching what it is intending to teach, meeting its learning objectives, and providing a variety of ways of presenting the content so that the individual has the capability of finding material which fits their personal learning style. So if that gives us an understanding of what it is to make a great e-learning content decision, let's take the next step. Let's try to transfer these general principles and ideas into specific guidelines. Great e-learning designers make design decisions which take the factors we've just looked at, particularly the factors under their control, into account. As well, they apply what they know about adult learning principles and the best practices about learning and e-learning that have been verified and documented in research. And perhaps the single most important of these best practices is our understanding of the learning pyramid. As you can see, The more you engage people, the more active they are, the more they do, the more they discuss, the more they see demonstrations, the more they listen to audio visuals, the greater the learning retention. And it's extremely important that you as an e-learning designer think about moving people away from the equivalent of lecture and the equivalent of reading to engaging them in interactive behaviors, showing them material, giving them an opportunity to discuss with others, giving them opportunities to practice, so that your learning retention rates are going to hit the top of what's available. So how do you do this in a practical and realistic way? Well, you're going to focus on, like every designer has to, on making trade-off decisions between the time it takes to develop the program, the cost it takes to develop the program, and the engagement that you can accomplish with the learners. You have to look at this and look at each piece of content, each content area, and ask yourself 3 interacting questions. You have to answer these questions and answer them simultaneously. First, what do we need participants to do so that they're going to be more effective back on the job? That means you have to be very clear on the know that, the know how to, and the know why components. And in the detailed program, we'll explore this in some depth. What does this mean and how do you do that? Second, you have to answer the question of how do I maximize the learning experience? How do I provide opportunities for each person to find material in my e-learning program which matches their personal learning style? And we use a learning style framework: learning by trying, learning by doing, learning by observing and reflecting, and learning by integrating. And that framework allows us to make those kinds of content decisions. And finally, we have to talk about how much does it make sense to invest. And we use a model of learning, a model of growth called PLISSIT: permission, limited information, specific suggestions, and intensive training, to help you and the people that you're working with, your project sponsors and your subject matter experts, to make those decisions as you put together the content of the e-learning program that you're working on. So by the time you're through working through the e-learning program, for which this is the overview, you'll have decision-making frameworks which will allow you to make realistic content trade-off decisions. And they are trade-off decisions. We don't all have the perfect budget. We don't all have all the time in the world. You can use these frameworks as you work through the consequences of these decisions with your project sponsors and clients, and with the subject matter experts that you're engaging to help develop the content material. You'll have the ability to make sharp decisions which increase the engagement of your e-learning participants, which is what we want to do, so that we increase their skill transfer back to the job, while at the same time balancing off these content decisions against your relevant concerns about development time and cost. And that's what this framework and the accompanying white paper is all about. Thank you for watching the video through to this point. Use the information that you have acquired to decide whether or not this e-learning program is the right one for you, the right way to increase your career worth, the right way to expand your talent. And if you like what you've seen, say so. Add a like or a comment below. And feel free to pass this video on to your friends on various forms of social media. Thank you for watching through to the end. Now take the next step. Do the things which will increase your career worth. Go to the website, access the e-learning program, and work your way through it. Or, if you need some more time to decide, join our mailing list so that we can let you know when programs, e-learning programs on topics like delegation, decision-making, working with other people are available to you. Or finally, subscribe to this channel and get not only notices on our new e-learning programs, but also access to the short learning videos that we will put up here. Thank you again for watching through to the end. Thank you for taking the time to look through this overview. I hope it's given you enough information for you to make a decision about whether or not this is the right program for you. I think that if you're involved in developing, delivering, managing the development and the delivery of e-learning content in any way, that you'll benefit a great deal from this program. Thank you again. My contact information's on the screen. Please feel free to follow up if there's anything else I can do to help you make this decision.